103, 5 Lincoln 102, Lincoln 103 and 102.
Responding to 401 parking structure, section 1 boy.
Henry 8, Henry 9. Respond to gate 437 Bravo for your dignitary detail. 3K 911 unattended 400 lower level near carousel 4 black bag. GPA in progress 401 parking structure section 4 boy.
Responding to 401 parking structure, section 1 boy.
415 passenger onboard aircraft.
Control 2 Franklin in a row.
484 suspect, female, Hispanic, 28 years of age, blue jeans, no further.
Control 5 Frank 401 is en route.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this post-Halloween edition of the Private Officer Radio Beat. On this first day of November 2019, less than 60 days left, and we'll be out of this year and into a brand new one. Hard to believe, but as we have been discussing throughout the year, that time goes by fast. Today on this program, we've got a lot to talk about. Some of you may have seen the not so kindly written article in the USA Today. This journalist who really beat up the security industry pretty well. We'll be talking about their size up of the security industry as a whole, specifically targeting and talking about G4S, the supposed largest security agency in the U.S. and in the world. And they had a lot of not so nice things they wanted to include in their article. We'll also be talking in this episode today about how security officers are oftentimes rejected or fired law enforcement. Several recent news articles from Florida, Texas, and New York point out the fact that police officers arrested or fired for excessive force, theft, and other departmental violations are ending up working in the security industry, where some of them started off with. The most recent article about this was yesterday, coming out of Florida, where a fired, arrested, imprisoned North Carolina police officer found his way to Kissimmee, Florida, where he's operating an unlicensed security agency. So we'll talk about that. We've got some interesting news, of course, that we want to talk about, and some other highlights coming up this morning as well. Always a lot of news, and if you ever see any news regarding security, law enforcement, public safety, please send it to helpdesk@privateofficer.com. Helpdesk@privateofficer.com. We will reward you for being one of our news hounds and helping us to bring the news to our members and our listeners. Also, you can sign up for breaking news, officer down reports, discount training, and a whole lot more at privateofficer.org. Privateofficer.org. Let me see, what else do we have going on today? We have, in our topic of interest today, we're going to be talking about how several people have gone from the bottom of the totem pole to the top of the business world. And basically, they did it the good old-fashioned way. No, not because they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, not because they had family who owned the business, not because they were somebody special. They started at the bottom, very bottom. In fact, one person started as the janitor of the company and now runs the place as the CEO of a major corporation. In fact, in the top 500 companies in the U.S. And we're going to talk about how you can progressively go from wherever you are on the totem pole to the top. But it's not going to be easy. And what I have found over the years is that many people want the top of the ladder, but they don't want to climb it. They want someone to push them to the top. They want someone to pull them to the top. They want the easy way and not the hard times, the hard knocks, the things that come with it. You know, a lot of good people in America today who run companies, who are CEOs and millionaires, didn't get it the easy way. They got it through attending the school of hard knocks, and that's what it's going to take in this world. Very few people. In fact, you know, we talk about in society, especially today, all of this white privilege and privilege of the big percentage of the U.S. Well, study after study has shown that less than 1% of people have really come into wealth because they were born into the right family, born into the right situation. Most people get it the good old-fashioned hard way. They pull up their bootstraps and they build their own careers, their own lives. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And today's topic is taking charge of your life and building whatever it is that you want to build. Of course, today we are right here at the beginning of a new month. And so as we are phasing out of the old year, we're beginning to look at the statistics of 2019. We compile these throughout the months, the weeks, the days, the whole year to get a clear picture of what's going on in private security, loss prevention and retail, public safety, campus security and law enforcement, and the industry as a whole. And the picture that we are putting together, the picture that the statistics are showing us, are not good. In fact, so far in 2019, 84 security officers have lost their lives that we are aware of, and there could be more because oftentimes they're just not included in the media, or it's not made nationally known. It's not picked up by one of the major media outlets like, Associated Press, Reuters, even CNN doesn't report it. There's a lot of local incidents that happen that just don't make it across the national wires. So as far as we know, the numbers are usually much larger than what we are able to compile together. In fact, we always say at least 15 or maybe even 20% larger than the numbers that we actually have been able to put together through statistics that we've found, seen, or been made aware of and verified. But also in 2019, the use of force by security officers has greatly increased. We did a study not too long ago that actually showed Texas was the state that security officers used deadly force the most often, Texas. And it was also the state where security officers came under fire most often, followed by Florida and California. These, of course, are states where there is a large contingency of private security. So that's not really too surprising when you have a lot of police officers in a certain concentrated area. The likelihood that they're going to be injured or killed is much higher than if you're talking about rural Wyoming or North Dakota or Montana, where they seldom see officers injured. And the same goes with private security. When you have large contingencies of private security, contract or proprietary working in any one state, such as California, Texas, New York, Florida, where it's heavily populated with people working in the security industry, then the likelihood of them being injured or killed or involved in a use of force incident is much greater than if we're talking about Rhode Island, or we're talking about North Dakota, or we're talking about even Utah. These situations and incidents happen every day in our larger communities, our larger cities. One of the places that we don't get a lot of information from, which is very surprising, is New York City. New York City has thousands and thousands of security officers who are working proprietary and contract security and as peace officers, and the information that comes out of there is very limited. We track all of the major news sources in New York State and the metro area, Connecticut, New Jersey, but the numbers and the information is scattered. But we still are able to pick up a lot of the stats happening in the tri-state area. We know a lot of security officers in New York are injured every day, but unfortunately the New York Times and New York CBS, they don't make a big deal out of it. It's just another person injured. Unless something major has happened, they just go about their way. But this year, 2019, is really going to close out as one of the more violent years in the last 10 years, and we'll be bringing those stats to you the 1st of January as soon as we get everything all compiled up. But the picture right now is dismal, not very good for 2019, I can tell you that. What we really want to get across during the rest of this year is that we need to come up with a plan to protect ourselves, a plan to protect our team, a plan to protect our company from being attacked by any level of use of force, and really get the awareness, situational awareness, and the wherewithal that we need to be ready, prepared, alert. We really need to get that going. I just read an article this morning before coming on air. Big headlines. Security industry can no longer tolerate thugs, felons, and others who are rejected. And that's what we were talking about a moment ago, about the security industry taking on many fired, imprisoned law enforcement officers, and it's just not a good situation for our industry. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, so much more to talk about. Like I said, we want to talk about some of these not so good news stories coming out this week. We want to talk about this very heroic school security officer, and we want to talk about this other just amazing school security officer in Alaska who is battling cancer, but her school has come out in full force to support her. And even though they say that she is really tough on them, they love her and support her during this time. And we're going to talk about how we can support her too. Coming right back here on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
I met Luke when I was pretty much born. We kind of just grew up together. He got his license when he was 16. We were going to the beach, and Luke was driving. I was in the passenger seat, and all of a sudden, I don't remember anything. I I wasn't conscious for it. We got hit by a drunk driver. I feel like I knew right away that it was never going to be the same. I don't know. The doctors, they were telling me I was so lucky to be alive. When I found out that he died on impact, I didn't really feel lucky. And sometimes I still don't. Drinking and driving is completely unnecessary, and I think it's selfish if you do it. It's not worth taking that risk, because you never know what's going to happen.
At Armor College, a public safety institute, we train those who help others. Paramedics and emergency medical technicians, firefighters, police officers, law enforcement, private security, bail enforcement, and those on the front line. Check us out today at armorcollege.org. ARMOUR college.org. We'll even bring the school to you. Armor College, a public safety institute. The USA Today took it upon themselves to do an expose on the security industry, but highlighted G4S, the London-based billion-dollar company, according to their article, that has billions of dollars worth of contracts in the public and private sector all over the U.S. and in several other countries, including the UK. The USA Today investigation found that G4S often undercut other contracts and filled those slots with employees who were criminals, ex-law enforcement that had poor track records. Of course, they mentioned the infamous G4S security officer, Omar Martin. He is the one you may remember who killed 49 people, injured 53 at Orlando's Pulse nightclub in 2016 while he was off duty, although some say he was really on duty. Martin, of course, unique in many ways because he was also an instructor. He was off the radar for the most part. However, really, there's no way that we can know what everyone's true intent is. We don't know what a person's going to do from day to day. But the USA Today article took it upon themselves to really attack G4S, and they're making it their fault for not identifying him as a problem, even though they say he had other troubling incidents with G4S. According to this story, G4S has had numerous problems. The company entered the U.S. with its first acquisition of a security company. They bought Wackenhut in 2002. It quickly grew into the third biggest private employer in the world now, and it continues to win a large share of the security market. Well, that's true, and we actually see in many markets where G4S comes in and they just eat up the competition because they underbid, undercut contracts all the time. That is true. G4S has also taken over many juvenile detention centers. They have taken over the ICE detention centers and gotten a lot of both federal and state contracts. The article went on to say that they've been involved in dozens of high-profile scandals involving allegations of abuse, sexual assault, cover-ups, and that managers and directors across the board took part of those cover-ups. The article is scathing, to say the least. It says that G4S hired or retained employees despite significant red flags. Not only did they hire questionable ex-law enforcement, but they purposefully hired veterans discharged from the military who had mental health issues. Ex-law enforcement and military who had been previously found to be disgraced in their previous career, their previous employer, and yet G4S took them on, including former prison guards who assaulted women, sexually assaulted prisoners, and so on and so forth. One of the things that's, this is very alarming, of course, but one of the things that's really more alarming to me is that when a security contractor, a security company, or any employer that's protecting others takes on a person knowing that they have a really bad, not just a bad, but a horrible background and history in breaking the law, attacking others, using excessive force, sexually assaulting customers, patrons, clients, staff, whoever it might be. And of course, many of the people that work in security, even for G4S, make minimum wage or barely above minimum wage. The article from USA Today said that the average security officer for G4S makes $9.25 an hour, even though they often post higher rates. We see that too. When a California police chief asked G4S to reduce the wages to save another $44,000 on the contract to guard a jail, a G4S manager warned him that it would result in high turnover and less qualified guards, but the story says, the chief says, that's okay. We just want the lower cost. And although this story really targets G4S, mainly G4S, it also talks about the security industry and what's happening across the board as more and more companies are going into privatizing law enforcement and prisons, even traffic control and accident investigations. I myself own a similar company where we provide law enforcement, university police, military police, city and county police with traffic investigators and controllers, community safety officers and investigators. It's the sign of the times where many police and sheriff's departments are understaffed. They don't have the budget, they don't have the manpower, and it's just completely difficult for them to recruit the people that they need. And so a lot of companies are finding a niche market in specializing in filling those holes, those gaps for law enforcement. Unlike other companies, we do thoroughly screen. We do not accept people who have had any prior bad acts, criminals, even law enforcement who's been let go or resigned under a cloud. We don't hire those people. But in security, it's always been that way. They've always hired whoever they could because they operate like a staffing company. And it's unfortunate because security is taking over many important jobs these days. The job of a security officer is getting harder. It's getting more diversified. The risk of being injured or even killed on the job is getting more and more I mean, we just said a few moments ago, the statistics proves it. 84, 85 going to be, killed this month. 100 by the end of the year, 110. Over 25,000 injured every year. The numbers tell the story. It's important that we figure out a way to be competitive while hiring quality people. We often say one size does not fit all, and that is true. We can no longer consider everyone to be an acceptable security officer for every site. It doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. And we're finding out the hard way with stories like this one from the USA Today. And there are several other negative stories in the news this week coming out of Florida. And I'm very familiar with this one, actually. A Florida news station identified a former private North Carolina police chief who was arrested for misusing the police NCIC information database to harass a neighbor of his and assaulted the neighbor with a taser. He was arrested. He went to prison and served about 18 months out of a 30-month sentence. And now Joseph Conover is now under investigation in Kissimmee, Florida, near Orlando, because he's operating an unlicensed security company. It was just ruled in Florida that he did not have a valid D or M license and was in violation of Florida statutes 493.6118. We have to understand that the days of this type of acceptance is over, and that the news is going to continue to crack down on this kind of stuff, just like they are with law enforcement. If you think that private security is going to get the nod, they're going to leave them alone and say, they're just security guards. No, they're not. We're going to see more and more investigations, more and more hard lines taken against private security, because private security is being given so much more authority. And we talk about this almost every day. I myself believe that we need a lot more training. I myself believe that we can no longer hire just any old Joe off the street. It's time that we become professionals in this profession. Let's take a quick break. We got a lot more to talk about. We certainly want to talk about this lovely school security officer who is fighting cancer, and how her school is supporting her. Coming right back here on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
Without this woman, my father couldn't have had his hip replaced.
Without these people, I'd be dead.
This man helped my son through leukemia. something amazing. Give blood.
With so much bad news in the headlines, it's always good to be able to come across a story, to get a news tip, or to be contacted by one of our members or one of our followers or even the individual to talk about a good story, a good headline, many security officers being recognized for the great works that they're doing, many security officers being appreciated by their employers. In Eagle River, Alaska, there seems to be a security officer there at the school they call Bulldog. That's right. Bulldog Bailey, they call her. Ashley Bailey, who's a steely-eyed security officer for the high school there, has been named the Bulldog because students say she has a reputation of not letting go once she's on you. Once she has found that you're violating school policy or the law, she grabs a hold of you like a bulldog, and she won't let go, says Principal Megan Hatswell. But recently, Bulldog Bailey discovered that something was not right. She was not feeling well, and like many women, she decided to go to the doctor after discovering a small lump. They took a biopsy, and unfortunately, it was breast cancer. And now, Ashley has had to take a leave from her school security position that she loves. She said she broke down when she found out. She was very upset, not only because of her own physical circumstance, but because she was going to have to leave the students that she loved at the school, and she didn't know how long it would take. She has an 8-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter, and her husband, Dan, who said, "Don't worry, everything's going to be all right." So Bailey has begun the treatment for her cancer. It's been a while since she's been back at the school. But before she left, the school gave her a huge send-off. And we have the pictures that show the smile on Bailey's face. One of the funny things that the students told her was, "Don't worry, we're going to save up some detentions for you when you get back so that we'll be able to, have a few violations, and you can put us in timeout and detentions as they do at that school. And we'll be, pretty good right now, but when you get back, we'll start being bad again so you could bulldog us." And so we're wishing Ashley a speedy recovery, and we're asking for your prayers and your thoughts. Now, we're going to be getting together with their principal next week on the phone, and we're going to find some ways that we can support her, whether that's through greeting cards, get well cards, or sending her small gifts, or even raising some money. I don't know what her medical insurance situation or bank account looks like, but we're going to find out these things when we talk to Principal Hatswell next week. So, again, it's just good to see that some people do appreciate their security officers and that they will stand behind them in this type of situation. We certainly love to recognize people who do the right thing and do a great job. And Memorial Healthcare in Owasso, Michigan, we helped recognize, as did another agency officer, Gino Menino. He was conducting an exterior patrol back in July. He observed a vehicle that was heading toward the entrance of the hospital, and it was late at night. He knew that door was not open. It had been locked, which was their procedure. He was going over to tell them to move around to the ER to be able to get inside the hospital. But when he got there, he discovered that the man was unconscious. And he took his pulse and realized that he didn't have a heartbeat. He wasn't breathing. And he began immediate CPR. He called for assistance from the ER staff, and together they were able to save him. And according to Dr. Christopher Clark, he believes that the security officer's quick action saved the man's life. James Ruthenberg is alive today because of that security officer's actions. The doctor said that the victim had less than 1% chance of survival based on all the circumstances, and had this alert security officer had not taken immediate actions to perform that CPR, the man probably would not have made it. And so it's always, always good. It's great, actually, to see and hear things that we're doing on the front line. Without our frontline officers out there every single day on patrol, making a difference, crime would definitely be higher than it already is. People would definitely die. I have no doubt about it. We're saving lives. The media might want to run down the security industry, and I have to be honest with you, in some cases, they're right on the mark. But in many cases, they're not. And what I wish would happen is that when the media runs down the security industry about all the negative aspects of private officers, I wish they would double down and really pump up the media news stories on all of the security interventions and all of the security rescues and all of the security detentions that are made, all of the money that's saved. Every year, Hayes International out of Florida comes out with an annual report, kind of like what Private Officer International does, but their report shows the number of shoplifters and fraud suspects and others captured by loss prevention and retail security, and the thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, in fact, even the millions that are recovered through asset protections and their interventions, their arrest and detentions of suspects. And the ORC, the Organized Retail Crime Investigators across our country today, they are literally stopping hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars from going out the door through their internal investigations. So whenever we can highlight the great things that we're doing on the front line, we will. That's why we have a brand new program coming out, Frontline Protectors. And you need to be looking for that coming out after the first of the year. It's a brand new series. And if you want more information, contact us, helpdesk@privateofficer.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got a whole lot more to share with you, and of course, a whole bunch of news. And we're talking about the topics, how you can go from the bottom to the top with just a little work.
More than 114,000 people are waiting on an organ transplant at any given time in the U.S., and at least 80% of those are waiting for a kidney.
For kidneys, it largely defaults to waiting time, but for livers, hearts, and lungs, it's largely based on the degree of illness and how sick someone is, and that defines their priority on the waiting list.
Dr. Charles Rosen, director of the Transplant Center at Mayo Clinic, says living donors can help save people waiting for a kidney or a liver, but those waiting for other organs, unfortunately, have to wait for a deceased donor. Dr. Rosen says if you're interested in saving another person's life with your organs after you die, it's important to sign up as a donor now while you're still alive to save your family from having to make a difficult decision at a difficult time.
We've heard from donor families or potential donor families that decided not to donate because it was such a stressful time in their lives that then 3-6 months later they felt some remorse for not doing that.
For the Mayo Clinic News Network, I'm Ian Roth.
Hey everyone, you're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector right here on the Private Officer Radio Network. Now don't go away because we are coming right back when we've got a whole lot more right here on the Private Officer Beat Radio. In the news this week, we have 3 different incidents, 2 in Florida, where unlicensed security officers have been charged with not only operating without a security officer license or a security business license, company license, but 2 arrested in Florida for impersonating police officers. And this is concerning as it continues to seem to increase across the country. We do run across unlicensed security personnel all of the time. This is not something really new, but it seems to be increasing, and I'm not really sure why that is. Is it because it's so easily done, or is it because there's a lack of enforcement? Is it because no one's really paying attention? And that's probably one of the things that is happening. Even in regulatory states, there's just not a lot of enforcement. One of the people being charged in Florida was a North Carolina private police chief. He also owned a security company in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And by all accounts, he was doing pretty well for himself. And then he began harassing an individual, and he improperly used the NCIC database, and he was charged for that because that's a criminal offense. And he served some prison time. But now he has actually shown up on the radar again, this time in Florida, and he's been charged with operating without a security license. And, you know, this is something that I don't understand. Him having gone through the police academy and having the knowledge and background that he did, why he would even think that this was okay. Because, you know, it's definitely not okay. But we will be keeping an eye on this, and of course a whole bunch of other news that we are following. Now, we just got this into our office moments ago, so we are reading this news release that has just come in. In Berkeley County, South Carolina, a security officer that was missing for almost 3 years, about 2 years and 9 months, disappeared. No one knew where he was. What happened? The security officer, Michael Curry, 55, was working at Santee Cooper Power Company when he suddenly disappeared in February the 1st, 2017. But sadly, yesterday, an employee doing some work on one of the generation stations spotted the shoe and went to investigate. The shoe actually had a bone in it. Law enforcement and rescue personnel called to the scene, recovered the body of security officer Michael Curry. And according to authorities, the body was pretty much all together. He still was in uniform. And now it's going to the autopsy, going to the coroner's office for an autopsy. And Berkeley County Coroner George Oliver said they will have some further information by the end of the day. So we'll be checking on that. Nobody knows at this point if he accidentally fell into one of the lakes used to generate power, or if he was pushed, assaulted, or if he committed suicide. Nobody knows. And we have followed this since the beginning when he went missing, and there were multiple rescue attempts, searches, not just one day, but multiple days and multiple times, and it was just a mystery. It has been a mystery, and We have reported on this. We have talked with authorities in Berkeley County. We have really had close tabs on this situation, and now we find, that his body has been recovered, and unfortunately, our worst fears have come to be realized, and he was found deceased. Also in the news, in Maricopa County, Arizona, detention officer Gene Lee was assaulted and killed at a correction facility there. The inmate attacked Officer Lee without provocation, grabbing him by the neck, sweeping his legs out from below him, and then smashing his head on the concrete floor. Authorities say Officer Lee had only been on the Sheriff's Department for 5 years. He was 64 years old, and he did succumb to his injuries. In Owasso, Michigan, a public safety officer at the Memorial Healthcare has been recognized and received an award for saving a man's life. This security officer was out doing his rounds when he spotted a man at the front of the emergency department, and the man was having a heart attack, and the public safety officer was able to perform CPR for him. A security team in Gastonia, North Carolina, had an unusual situation happening at their church Sunday. It seems that at the Frontline Ministry, a man entered the church, unexpectedly began taking off his clothes when he was asked to leave. He claimed to have gotten the spirit and began to strip down naked. The security team detained him while notifying police. And even after the police were there on the scene, the man would not put his clothes back on and was taken into custody there. Very unusual situation. In Victorville, California, police there are reporting that a suspect assaulted a security officer and then tried to ignite a fuel truck that was delivering gasoline at the Costco gas station. Authorities said at about 8:14 p.m., a man identified as Sol Mahia, 39, began to act aggressively toward the security officer and assaulted him after being asked to leave the area. He then ran over to a gasoline truck that was offloading some gasoline and tried to catch that on fire. And fortunately for everyone, that did not occur, and it was prevented. The man was taken into custody. He's facing some serious charges. In fact, the ATF could get involved and charge him federally with trying to blow up, basically, the gas tanker. In Humboldt County, California, authorities there are very disturbed with an incident that happened at a marijuana grow farm, a legally licensed, permitted grow farm. Halloween night, at least 6 attackers, heavily armed, stormed the grow facility, and the security officer on duty was staying in a fifth-wheel RV. He wouldn't come out of the vehicle. They surrounded the RV and they threw some type of incendiary device into the trailer, caught that on fire. The security officer came out. He was disarmed and taken into custody after some shots were fired. Then the men allegedly torched the security officer's vehicle and then put him into a Connex, which is a metal trailer, shipping trailer like you would get off a ship, and they tried to rob the marijuana grow facility of money and marijuana. The suspects did flee. Law enforcement was called, but it took them a little while to get there. But Humboldt County Sheriff's Department said that they are investigating. The security officer was injured, as was another man during the gun battle. No further information, but they say it is still under investigation. 6 people were also arrested in Queens, New York for assaulting a security officer while stealing $8,000 worth of fragrance from a store. Police say the suspects fled, but that they were soon arrested by NYPD officers in the area. Also in the news this week, spotlight on the Miami police. And trust me, this news headline is not surprising, nor is it the first time. A news investigation in Miami shows that Miami cops frequently use overtime security jobs while they are also on the payroll at the police department, so they're double dipping. There are a lot of rampant misconduct, a lack of city reporting, and officers running rampant, doing whatever they want, according to this report. We find this does happen in the off-duty jobs across the country, and it's a very unfortunate situation. Security officers on campus patrol at the University of Tulsa was able to take 2 students into custody who had firearms and a large quantity of drugs in the dorm room. Corey King and Lazarus May, both 18 and 19, were charged after midnight with possession of firearms and drugs on campus. After smelling marijuana, they were notified law enforcement, who secured a search warrant for the room and found a quantity of marijuana, a rifle, some other drugs, and they are in custody. A Brinks security officer is wanted now by the FBI after an armored truck was found abandoned Sunday the 27th in the rear of Costco's in Tempe, Arizona. FBI say that Edwin Johnny Villa was the driver of the armored car. When his companion went in to pick up or deliver some money, the driver of the armored car fled with the vehicle, stealing a large quantity of money. He's wanted for federal offenses of theft, felony theft, unlawful use of means of transportation. The 23-year-old Hispanic, his information has been posted now nationwide, and police are on the lookout for him. It is a tragic thing, but it does happen frequently that those who are sworn and private officers steal from those that they are supposed to be protecting. In Austin, Texas, a woman there is accused of spraying blood and urine on security officers and paintings at the governor's Texas state capitol. According to police, Amber Lynette Green was arrested Monday after spraying a Texas Department of Public Safety officer and another security officer with unknown liquid in a bottle. She also sprayed blood on paintings. She's being held on $25,000 bond. A man armed with a knife was shot and killed. This happened on Thursday, police say, in Santa Clara, California. The Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority's private security at a light rail station did shoot and kill a man who was armed with knives and scissors and threatening other people and the security officer. This is still under investigation. At this time, police say no charges are being filed on the security officer. In Long Island, New York, a loss prevention security agent at the Roosevelt Field Mall was attacked and pepper sprayed while trying to detain suspects stealing $9,000 worth of handbags. According to authorities, the security officer approached a man who raised bolt cutters over his head in a threatening manner and a woman who pepper sprayed him. In Leesburg, Florida, police there are investigating after a security officer pulled her firearm twice during some type of party competition. There was several disturbances, and the security officer made a threatening move by pulling the weapon. Maryland, a man won $800,000 in an award after suing Six Flags and their security staff. He was at the Six Flags in Bowie, Maryland in 2018. He had some type of confrontation with security while he was looking for his children. He apparently didn't have any shirt on, and they told him he could not come back into the park without his shirt. A confrontation ensued. He was handcuffed and brought to the ground. He did sue for $10 million, and the court did award him $800,000. Gloria Graham, the University of Virginia Associate Vice President for Safety and Security, has resigned her position just after being there a little bit more than a year. Graham was a civilian chief of security. The UVA, University of Virginia, also has a full-time police department. Her position will be filled by somebody already on the payroll there. TSA in Minneapolis, Minnesota is closing one of their newest security checkpoints because of a lack of personnel. They say that it's not really used that often, and they've decided to shut it down. Middletown, Connecticut, at the Middlesex Hospital, security personnel were threatened by a woman who said that nurses were checking out her husband while she was there for treatment. Karen Brooks, 38, was taken into custody and charged with threatening and disorderly conduct and released on a bond. Always news happening. Sign up today at privateofficer.org. Privateofficer.org. Sign up today for news in your mailbox. You'll get breaking news as it happens, Officer Down reports, discounts, and training notices. Sign up today at privateofficer.org. Remember our friends over at Body Armor USA. We've got what it takes to protect you, whether you need protective clothing, body armor, if you work corrections, law enforcement, security, we've got what it takes to protect you. BodyArmorUSA.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got so much to talk about. We want to tell you really about how to really get up and take yourself to where you want to be in your career or business ownership. We have 3 different situations that have happened recently where people have overcome their situation and now they are financially secured business owners. Coming right back here on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
Are you shopping around for armed or unarmed security training, CPR, first aid training, lethal or non-lethal training in and around the greater Metro Charlotte area? Do you want to be SLED certified so that you can maybe start a new career or make some part-time income? Then check out Premier Training Academy, Charlotte, North Carolina's leading academy for all things training. 704-806-4933. Ask for John. Premier Training. We're here to train you so that you don't make mistakes. Premier Training Academy, Metro Charlotte's premier training service. 704-806-4933.
For some children, America isn't the land of promise. It's a place where every day is a struggle. Because today in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. For these children, living in poverty means going without medicine, going without food, going without a warm home, or even a roof over your head. And that's life for nearly 13 million children of all races, all across America. Where will you draw the line and get involved? You can help these children and their families find a way out of poverty for good. And you can make a difference in more ways than you think. Will you help? Go to povertyusa.org today. Because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for
Mark Masters was a wildfire firefighter. At 18 years old, he began fighting wildfires and forest fires in Idaho. He spent a number of years jumping from planes, going into fires where most of us would be running out of them. Through the years of his fire service, he learned how important it was to have the right people in the right places. He also learned that sometimes it's better not to be the person jumping from the plane, but to be the person providing others who would jump from those planes. Now he runs Sholea Emergency Management Staffing Company. It's a business he founded in 2009 to help businesses and the U.S. government deal with natural and human-caused disasters like Superstorm Sandy and the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Now the company is listed as 606 on Inc.'s top 1,000 companies in the country. He's grown that business from 0 employees to a multi-million-dollar business. Working as a firefighter for the federal government, starting at the age of 18, was hard work. He didn't get the gravy job. He wasn't sitting back at command. He wasn't back where it was nice and AC cooled. No, he was out on the battleground. He was out in the middle of 1,000-degree heat from wildfires. He spent years fighting fires, jumping from helicopters, rappelling from helicopters, and basically living a life where you work up to 72 hours at a time. It was not an easy job, and it was not a position of recognition. But it was something he loved to do, and he knew he was helping his community and his country. But, you know, he figured out that after getting married and having a family, jumping out of aircraft for a living, well, wasn't really a great viable career option or opportunity for him. And so that's when he began to realize that other states were looking for firefighters. They were looking for privatizing some of the firefighting and some of the other disaster relief. At the age of 26, with no assets and no money, no cash to even think about starting a business, he did just that. He began in his garage. It wasn't, pretty. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't something where he was making thousands and millions every year. But being a proud citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, he decided to open up that business in his home state of Oklahoma. He said he went to the Small Business Assistance Center and talked with folks there about how to start a business. What was the technical aspects? What was the legal aspects? And he learned from those people at the center how to start his business, a temporary staffing agency that would provide emergency service workers, firefighters, and other trained personnel that would come in and help with disasters. After several years, he began getting those contracts with federal agencies. They would call him overnight. They would say, hey, I've got a hurricane coming in. We're going to need about 150 people immediately. They would call him from the U.S. Department of Defense, from the Forestry Service, and others, because he had a specialized staffing company where he could round up those people already trained to rush into any disaster and to assist state, county, and federal government. He put boots on the ground. He said probably the biggest moment in the history of the company came in 2016 when he had been trying to get a contract to do business with the U.S. Department of Defense to provide some wildland fire consulting. Up until about that point, most of his business model really was to be there when things happen, not really to prevent them, not to consult on them, but he wanted to begin consulting. And it took about 2.5 years of pitching and meeting and negotiating with the Department of Defense. And you know what? It wasn't easy, because there were other companies out there at that point that began providing the same type of services. But he stuck to it. He knew that if he stayed on track, that sooner or later, he would get that opportunity with the Department of Defense and others. And that opportunity came. After all of those meetings and negotiating, the Department of Defense called on one single problem. They needed help. They wanted to prepare Air Force better to be prepared for the wildfires that sometimes hit at some of their bases. And they asked him to prepare a fire management plan for 35 military bases, Air Force bases. And he wrote the fire management plans, conducted hazardous fuel reduction assessments. He staffed firefighters on those bases to protect critical military infrastructure from threats of wildfires. That first federal government contract with the Department of Defense netted him about $4 million, he said. And right after that, not too long after that, another $4 million contract came in. Now imagine this. He went and had his meeting with the Department of Defense, and they said, sounds pretty good, but I don't think it's something we need. And what if he had walked out of there and never thought about it again? Never picked up the phone to call them again and ask for another meeting? Put it on the back burner or close his briefcase and said, oh, well, I guess it wasn't right for me. I guess it wasn't meant to be. None of this would have happened. He stayed with it. He stuck it out. And today, like I said, he's in the top 10,000. He's 605 in the top 1,000 companies in the U.S. It's amazing. The point is, you can do it. You can be whatever it is that you want to be. You can be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be born with a silver spoon. Most people, honestly, in the U.S. and probably around the world, come by being in a good position the old-fashioned way. They've worked for it. Ashley Cooper began as a janitor at a company that would one day become Palladian Security Group, Ltd. He worked as a janitor around the company. It wasn't a glamorous job cleaning toilets, cleaning up after other people. When he turned 18, he went and he enrolled in the University of British Columbia. While staying there at the company, working now not as a janitor, but actually as a security guard. After a while, they promoted him to be in charge of accounting, balancing the books. And at age 22, he took over that position. Now, it doesn't hurt that his company was actually owned by his brother, who wasn't really all that hands-on. After a while, Cooper asked his brother, who was a busy stockbroker, if they could buy Paladin and become one of Vancouver's larger base security companies. It really wasn't the big deal that his brother was looking for. They didn't have a lot of interest in that time of security, but they did buy the company. Cooper built his business, now the largest private full-service security company in Canada, the old-fashioned way. One small job at a time, done it well, leveraged that into a slightly larger job, and repeat. And that's how businesses grow. They don't grow by going out and getting $1 million contract on day one of their new business. They do it a little at a time. He brought on people that actually had credibility. He was careful on who he hired. He wanted every employee to be hands-on and involved and take the job as serious as he did. The business has grown and grown and grown through this model. Now, they employ more than 15,000 people in 38 offices across North America. I'd say that was pretty good, wouldn't you? Time and time again, we hear of people who have no money, no silver spoon, no way to even begin dreaming about being an entrepreneur. Rex David Thomas was another American businessman who founded one of the largest fast food restaurants in the U.S. And he did it on a concept that many would have said, you're literally crazy. It's not going to work. You see, Rex Thomas is well known around the world as Dave Thomas, the founder and CEO of Wendy's, who started another hamburger joint. And as I've told this story before, he started it just outside of Columbus, Ohio, with one little dinky store in the downtown area. Everyone kind of said, come on, there's already enough hamburger joints. We don't need another one. What's going to make yours so much different? While many hamburger places were using frozen hamburgers, he decided to use only fresh hamburger. He also said, I knew that everybody was using round burger. I decided to use a square. People wanted to see what was happening, and people wanted to know what's the big deal. And it didn't take long for Dave to open up a second and a third location. And so on goes the story. The fact is, you don't always need to be wealthy to start a business or even to grow a business. You just have to have the wherewithal and the heart to go forward. Whether you want to be an entrepreneur or not, whether you want to own your own business or not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is to move up the ladder, to move up into your career, to do better for yourself, to have more money, do better for your family, live in a nicer house, drive a nicer car, wear nicer clothes. You've got to want it. And if you don't want it, it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to knock on your door and give it to you. Nobody's going to make you or force you to be more than what you want to be. And the point of this really is simple and boils down to, if it's to be, it's up to me. I myself have progressed through the years, not because of any handout. I wasn't born into a rich family. In fact, we were on welfare. But I was able to overcome. I had some plans. I put them together. I worked the plan. And now I'm at the best point in my life I've ever been. You can do better. You can be more. You can have more. You can go further. But it's up to you. And until you decide to take that first step, it's not going to happen. That's going to conclude this week's episode of the Private Officer Beat. We're glad that you've been here, and we hope that you've taken some information to heart and that we've been able to maybe touch your entrepreneurial spirit. Maybe tomorrow you'll decide, hey, you know what? I think he was right. We're going to start a business. If you need any assistance, always contact helpdesk@privateofficer.com, and we'll be happy to help you the best way that we can. Until the next time, be safe, be blessed, and we'll see you back here on the radio